we've all heard those amazing stories, haven't we, of how people meet, their eyes meet across the room, the crowd parts, they find themselves next to each other, the orchestra is swelling in the background, everything is in soft focus. I'm going to tell you my story of how I met Jez and how we started to date, and you can judge for yourselves whether it's quite that sort of story. What I do want you to know, however, is that I was a teenager. It was just a couple of years ago. I was a teenager. Don't laugh. I was a teenager when we met. And when I was a teenager, not everybody had a mobile phone. Can you believe that? And so in my family home, we had one phone that was attached to the wall that had a cord. And if you wanted any hope of privacy of a conversation, we had to go into our cupboard under the stairs, pull the door behind us, and balance on the Hoover or the boxes or whatever happened to be in there. And I was on the phone to my best friend, Jez. Here's a spoiler, he's now my husband. But we were just best friends at that moment. And Jez said to me, I like someone. Well, I thought, this is very exciting. So I said, who is it? And he said, I'm not going to tell you. And I said, well, that's not very fair. I said, if I guess, will you tell me? He said, yeah, if you guess, I'm going to tell you. So I started off smooth. He started off with all of the girls in all of the world I started off with. And I narrowed it down to where it could only be me. And I said, is it me? He said, yes. So I did what you would think I would do. I hung up the phone. I then burst rather dramatically out of the cupboard door and I lay on the hall floor. And I lay like that for an hour. An hour! My family was stepping over me like, what are you doing, you crazy woman? And then I got my mum to give me a lift because I couldn't drive. I got my mum to give me a lift to Jez's house. I arrived and I said, I'm here. I'm ready to be your girlfriend. And he was like, what just happened? You just hung up on me. Fortunately, Jez has always had wisdom and grace. And so we didn't start dating in that second. We did start dating a few weeks later. Fast forward a few years later and a little bit of long distance and we got married. And there's that moment, isn't there, in every wedding ceremony that we love. You know, the crowds are gathering beforehand. There's that kind of excited chatter amongst people. There's music softly playing in the background. And then there's a moment that we know she's here. And there's this hush. I don't know how we know it, but we just know. And then the proper music strikes up really loudly and the doors burst open. Well, that's how I imagine it happening. And the bride glides in as though she's made of something very heavenly. And she's never looked so beautiful and it's extraordinary. She makes her way to the front, but secretly we're all turning to look at the groom, aren't we? We want to see how he feels when he first sees his beautiful wife-to-be. And we know if he cries that it really is true love. Don't we? We know that. And there's those moments, aren't there, where we make our vows to one another, where we promise. They're powerful. Jez and I did it. We promised things to each other. We made vows to one another. They're incredible moments. They're incredible times in our ceremonies as we promise to spend a lifetime together, honoring one another. It's so beautiful. And we want to stay in that moment, don't we? Oh. If you've been married for longer than, let's say, 24 hours, you will know the reality is that we don't stay in that moment. Because as we've learned in Kings and Queens, part 1 and part 2, we are designed to be one. God's design is that two become one. But men and women, if you've noticed, I don't know if you have, are very, very different. And so bringing two together as one poses the odd challenge here and there. And yet, God says it's his design. So I think there's something for us to wrestle with together. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 18, it says this. Now the Lord God said, it's not good, it's not beneficial for the man to be alone. I will make him a helper, one who balances him, a counterpart who is suitable and complementary for him. Now, we're not talking about the man needing to be having a woman because he's inept, because he can't do anything on his own. There's a disturbing dialogue that rises up in our society and in our church sometimes that says, oh, men can't do anything unless they're with women. It's got no place in the church. No, it's not good for mankind to be alone because we, men and women, are made in his image and therefore made for relationship. But let's be honest, we've also struggled with the word helper because helper doesn't mean housekeeper. PA. It doesn't mean servant or dog's body. And do you know what has risen up in our society? There's a dialogue that rises up and says Christianity has always been about male dominance. It's always been about the oppression of women. And it usually comes from women who have been wrongfully oppressed by men. And none of that has any place in the church. We're kings and queens, and we're made to rule together. We're made to rule together. And then I discovered this footnote, friends, that changed everything. Because that word helper, I was thinking, why the word helper, Lord? I looked for lots of different versions, but helper is the best that this English language of ours can do. So helper, a suitable and complementary counterpart for him. Do you know what it literally could be translated as? Like his opposite. And I was like, finally, I found in the Bible why Jez and I are completely different to one another. Finally, I found biblical proof that I'm not going mad, that we are completely different. But here's the thing. God's design is that two would become one. God's design is that we would be counterparts to one another, that our partnership would be beneficial, that it would be complementary, that it would grow us. But his design and the way that he would plan for us to do that is that we would do that through two people who are complete opposites. But God creates oneness in our marriage. And the enemy comes to divide that oneness and make us two. The very thing that God designed is this beautiful illustration. The enemy comes to target and says, it's because of your difference, it's because of your oppositeness that I think you would be better off as two instead of one. But just because it's God's design does not mean that it's easy. I've been married for over 18 years. I've been together with Jez for over 20 years. I know I don't look old enough, but as I said, we were teenagers. But I have discovered over the last 20 plus years that we are incredibly different in almost every way. Take, for example, the thing we like to do with our rest. Jez likes productive rest. He likes to organize stuff. He wants to clear stuff out, bring order out of chaos. And it's good that he's married to me and we have 4 children because there's a lot of chaos to bring order out of. He wants to organize the shed and organize the loft. Or he wants to be productive in his rest by going up a mountain. I like proper rest. I want to sit and read a book. Occasionally reach for a glass or a mug of something. That's the kind of rest I like. And so therefore, finding things to do on our time off together, honestly, over the years, has been a little bit of a challenge. And there have been times where I've compromised and gone up mountains, and there have been times when he's done things that he would really rather not. The most recent one of which was for our recent anniversary. This is a picture of Jez at a spa. I know. Oh, what a wonderful husband. You love spas, Claire. Oh, what a brilliant thing to do, to go to a spa together. And it was. We had a really lovely time. I'm going to be honest. It was like taking a puppy. Because we arrive, we're in our robes of white, and we lay on the lounges. I had my book, and Jez had gone to explore the different steam and sauna rooms. And I've read a few pages, and he came back, oh, Claire, have you been into every single room over there? And I was like, no, I don't really like steam rooms and sauna rooms because I can't breathe in them. I'm not really, but there's one where ice falls from the sky onto your head and then you run. And I was like, I don't want to know about the ice. I don't care about that. I'm just going to stay here. Have a great time though. And then we go into the swimming pool and there's lots of different bubble things around the edge of the swimming pool. And I find one and I'm relaxing. Claire, let's go and try that one over there. And I'm like, I really like this one here. I'm absolutely fine with this one here. No. But then you won't know what they all are like. And I was like, I don't care, actually, what they're all like. I'm happy with this one right here. But I'm not just talking about the likes and the dislikes that we have, because some of you may be fortunate enough to have partners where you like to do some of the same things together. I'm talking much more deeper than that. There are some fundamental differences in the way that we, Jez and I, and the way that we, men and women, approach situations and circumstances. There are different strengths that we bring. There are different challenges that we have. There's a different approach in the way that we operate. And God says that this is part of his design. You see, the Genesis story shows us that we were designed differently on purpose. But if we're being honest, sometimes that's the very thing, our difference, our oppositeness, which has the potential to drive us apart. The potential to be the thing which rips two individuals out of the one that God created. And so what do we do when oneness feels too hard, when the difference between us feels too great, when the gap between us, when our oppositeness feels too huge? We blame the designer or the design. When the truth is, it's my sin, it's my insecurity, it's my imperfection, it's my challenge, it's my family history, it's my baggage that comes and brings the thing that's going to drive us apart. It's not the design of marriage or the designer who is perfect in every way. Yeah. This is a picture of Jez and I. It's great when you see a picture and you can think, wow, I've aged well. I think I look younger now than I did when I was 16 in that picture. Scroll back to that picture. The Claire that you see there was incredibly high maintenance as a girlfriend. I was emotional. I was out of control. I hadn't learned how to control the gift and the emotions that God has given me. I certainly hadn't learned to tether it to the heart of God. Scroll back to Jez at that time, and he's naturally more consistent, but actually he had an ability to detach from situations. He had an ability to, because he wants his words to mean something, he doesn't say anything at all. And therefore, it felt like we were distant from one another. And I remember times when I would literally stamp my feet. And I'm whirling into like a frenzy, going, would you just fight me? I just want to see that you feel something. I just want to know that you're in there. I just want to know that there's some kind of emotion in you. And it was painful. And the difference between us felt too big. And the thing was, we could find voices in the world that would say to us at any point, yeah, he should totally understand you. Oh, it's not right, Claire, that he doesn't get your emotion. He should let you be who you're meant to be. Oh, seriously, Jez, she's just one of those crazy mental women. She's just over-emotional. We can find agreement for things in the world, and that agreement causes our one to be divided into two. But God's design is for oneness, and God's design is for opposites, and therefore there's something that we need to learn in it. Because here's what I've discovered over the last 20 plus years. In our difference lies the potential for our greatest strength. Because scroll forward to where we are now. Absolutely not perfect, absolutely still on the journey. Just in this last week, we had a conversation where Jez said, it's like you speak poetry all the time. And I said, yeah, but it's like you speak binary all of the time. We feel like sometimes we are opposites to one another, but it's in our difference that our greatest strength lies. Because I've learned that I need the steadfast, immovable, godly conviction of my husband to ground me and give me covering. But he's realized that he needs the passion and the emotion and the guide and the lead that my heart gives us together. And together we have discovered and gone places that individually we could never have gone on our own. We've had opportunities that if it were just for our oneness, if it weren't for our oneness, we would never have had. There is now strength in me because God has made us one. I can say I'm steadfast. I can say that I've got more conviction. I can say that I'm more emotionally stable. Jez will tell you I'm not high maintenance as a wife now because of the oneness and because we've learned to embrace the difference between us. Ephesians 5 says this, for this reason a man is to leave his father and his mother and lovingly hold to his wife, since the two have become joined as one flesh. Marriage is the beautiful design of the Maker, of the Almighty, a great and sacred mystery meant to be a vivid example of Christ in his church. In a different version, it says, no longer two, they become one flesh. This is a huge mystery, and I don't pretend to understand it all. So if you're married here and you don't understand it all, that's okay, because Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament, didn't either with the revelation of God. And yet, our marriages were designed to show an unbelieving world the difference that a relationship with God can make in our lives and in our marriages. Our marriages were designed to be a picture to a world who doesn't know who God is, who doesn't know the incredible thing about being in a relationship with Him. Our marriages were designed to be an illustration of the oneness that is possible in God and in our relationship with Him. And so it's no wonder that they're under pressure. It's no wonder that there's a challenge that we face within them. It's no wonder that the enemy has designs on our marriages too. And we've got to choose, are we going with the script that God has and the design that He has, or are we going with what the enemy says and what the world says to our marriages? Oneness or two from one are our choices. You see, the enemy comes and he illuminates the difference. He illuminates the challenge. He makes it seem impossibly big. But God comes to reveal strength and shape. God says, you lean into me. I'm going to show you how this difference was meant to look. You see, oneness in marriage is designed to bring glory to God. The enemy comes to divide and make us two. I feel that as a church, there's a call on us to realize in a new way that our marriages are part of the way that we're going to reach this world. This week, I have found myself repenting for myself, for our marriage, and on behalf of our church, where we haven't recognized the significance and power that our marriages have in showing a world what a relationship with God looks like and what the purpose of it is. And before I sort of pulled this message together, I was saying, God, what do you want to speak about? He said difference really clearly. And then he says, I want you to speak about idolatry. So I'm going to jump into Exodus, and I'm going to jump into what God first says about idolatry. Not into Exodus, into Ephesians. Anyway, you shall have no other gods before me or besides me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above or in the earth beneath or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. Now, I love Jez. I'm his biggest fan, but I haven't yet steeped to the level of making a gold statue of him or a shrine to him in my house. So why did God say that it's important? Why has this come in week 1 and week 2 of this series? And God has asked me again to share it because you and I were made to worship. We were made to give adoration. We were made to give praise. We were made to give worship to something. And any time that worship takes the form of anything other than God at number 1, we make an idol out of it. It becomes idolatry in our lives. And here's the thing, we can make idols out of our husbands and our wives. If you're looking to your wife, to your husband for your security, for your happiness, for your peace, for your esteem, for anything other than with God, you're making an idol out of them. And God has some pretty important things to say about idolatry. He doesn't like it because we were made to find all of those things in God. And I believe I'm talking to men and women, and you need your wife or your husband to bring you confidence, perhaps even to get to church. You need your husband or wife to have any sort of chance of having some self-esteem and their words of affirmation. You need your husband or your wife to make you feel brave when you feel afraid. When Jez and I first got married, I was so afraid of being around new people and what they'd think of me because my self-esteem was so cripplingly poor that I used to follow him into rooms. He became my strength. He became my source of comfort. He became my courage. He became an idol in my life. When I go to anything other than God for the source of these things, it becomes an idol. And when we go to anything to satisfy the deep cravings within us that are God-given and God-made, it's idolatry within us. But the reality is that idols can't satisfy. And what happens is we put all of this pressure on our husband and our wife and all of this pressure on our marriage that it was never meant to take. It was never meant to withstand the pressure that idolatry puts on it. And so that another thing where one becomes two. And whatever our marital status, we've got to deal with idolatry. I think I'm talking to people in this room, around our locations, wherever we're listening, and you've got Pinterest boards of what your wedding's going to be like, what your family life's going to be like. You've got Instagram accounts that you follow, which is like hashtag goals around what your future is going to look like, and it's idolatry in your life. You're placing your future happiness and security in those things instead of in God, and him being the source of comfort, and his being the source of identity. It's okay. It's okay to have ideas for your wedding. It's okay to have Pinterest boards. But when it becomes something other than the number one, I believe I'm talking to people and you say you love God, and you do love God. But when push comes to shove, actually, your wife, your husband, your family comes first. It's idolatry. Your marriage was never meant to withstand it. And we need to deal with it if our lives truly are surrendered to Jesus. You see, when God comes first and he satisfies us, we get to see more clearly the design and purpose in our differences and grow into our oneness. If we're placing all of our focus on our husband and wife, we don't get to see the beautiful design of the Almighty God. We focus on the individual of our husband and our wife. What if we saw our differences as an opportunity to grow our oneness? If you're married here today, what would you say right now is the source of your greatest difference? What is the thing right now that feels like the in your marriage because of the difference between you? I don't know, maybe one of you is more emotionally led. Maybe one of you feels things more. And the other one, you'd say, I'm just logical and rational. And I don't know what he or she is doing. This isn't about male and female. Or only. Maybe one of you is a risk taker and ready to go and do anything, anywhere, and the other one is more like play it safe. And it's a source of tension because one of you wants to go pioneer and the other one is like, would you just hold up? We need to have at least something on a bit of paper somewhere. Maybe one of you is ordered and your brain is filled with grid lines, and the other one of you is more chaotic and scattergun in your creativity and in your thinking. Maybe one of you is a spender more naturally and gives, and maybe the other one of you is a saver. What is the source of your difference? Is it as simple as one of you is more introverted and charges up on your own, and the other one is extrovert and charges up around people? And these are the things which in the day-to-day can cause real tension and make our differences feel bigger than our oneness. What if you dared to pray, we dared to pray, God, what's the design in our difference? What's the design today in the way that you've made us different? And how do you want to use it to glorify you in greater measure? Our marriages have never been so important. You don't need me to tell you that we're living in a world which is changing. You don't need me to tell you that our world is increasing in its sense of uncertainty, in its sense of insecurity. You don't need me to tell you that. There are things that a generation ago that were unthinkable, which are becoming more and more commonplace today. We have a world that is spiraling into more and more uncertainty. And the Bible has something to say about the place of the church within it. And I believe this series is part of the way that God is raising up his church to say, you've got a voice in this. You're not on the edge of things. You've got a voice to speak into marriages, and you've got a voice to speak into the world in all of its change, in all of its uncertainty. And it says this in Ephesians. This really is in Ephesians. The church. You see, the church is not peripheral to the world. The world is peripheral to the church, and the church is Christ's body in which he speaks and acts, by which he fills everything with his presence. The way that an unbelieving, unknowing world is going to know the reality of God, the reality of who he is the church. We are his plan A. Look around you, wherever you are, look around you. We are plan A, and there is no plan B. We are the way that an unbelieving world gets to know about who God is and who Jesus is and what a relationship with him looks like. And for too long, the church has thought, well, we're just kind of over here, tagged on the side of society, and that's the kind of main event, and we're here, and occasionally we'll throw the odd grenade in, or occasionally we'll throw the odd bit of truth in and hope for the best. But God says, no, the church, my world is central. Everything else that's going on is peripheral to it. But if we don't stand up and live the way that God has called us, then the world that is around the church doesn't know. Then the world that is around doesn't get to see the difference that a relationship with God can make. You see, the church is the place where God's design is meant to be most revealed. The church is the place where we should see marriages made up of opposites. And there are people laughing who know me, who are listening to this message, because you're laughing at the stories of my difference, because you know the reality. But we see within our churches that there should be places where people see the differences between us, but see how the marriages work, see how fruitful they are, see the change that is made. The church is the place where God's design is meant to be most revealed in its oppositeness. The best marriages in the world should be in the church. They should be in the church in all of the beauty of their oppositeness. Jez and I have been together for a number of years, as I've said, and we have had some wonderful, glorious, incredible times together. We have known the best of times. We've got 4 incredible children. We have the privilege of planting church, building church in a city here in the UK. We have just an incredibly blessed life. We've also walked through some things in our oneness that would cause many people's oneness to split into 2. We've walked through infertility, and I looked up this week, couples that are experiencing infertility are 3 times more likely to break up. We've walked through adoption, and it's been the greatest gift to our lives. But if you want to know who some of the most vulnerable families in our society are, it's our adoptive and foster families, because they're caring for children that have experienced trauma. They're raising and living with the reality of that. We are walking through illness, which affects my everyday. It's the things within our day-to-day lives, the family challenges, the wider family challenges, the pain, the grief, some of the loss that we've experienced, and it puts pressure on our oneness. And those are the times, honestly, where it's felt like, I'm not sure that in this challenge, our difference, I'm not sure we can make it. Because his approach and my approach just feels like we're starting on opposite sides of the world. But the reality of pursuing the oneness that God designed us with is that we need to pursue it through pain. But we have to acknowledge that pain puts pressure on our oneness. And I believe I'm speaking to people, and you know what the reality of that pain putting pressure on your oneness looks like. I think I'm speaking to people, and you know your relationships broke up because of the challenge, the pain, the difficulty that you experienced, your partner experienced, you experienced together, and it felt too big. I know I'm speaking to people, and you've walked through far greater things than ever I have. But the design of God remains the same within it. And we need to work out how to pursue oneness, how to grow oneness, how to build oneness through the pain, through the challenge, through the suffering, through the great times, through the arguments, through the day-to-day. We need to figure out the pursuit of that. And I want to share a few things, of some really practical things, like how? How do we do that? How do we pursue that oneness? Because here's what oneness says. Oneness says it's our problem. I'm the one that was infertile. I'm the one that is ill. You will never catch either Jez or I saying it's her problem. It was because she's ill. I'm frustrated that we can't go out tonight because she's too tired. You won't ever hear that from my mouth, but you'll never hear it from my husband. Why? Because it's our problem. So it's an our thing. You see, when it's her problem or his problem, it puts pressure on that oneness, and it creates 2 individuals out of one. But actually, no, it's our problem. So maybe there are some things that you're facing, and it's not health problems, but you know there's a problem that we're wrestling with, but it's because he won't talk about it. It's because he has an addiction. It's because she's always doing this. It's because she won't stop that. When we use that language, we speak the language of the enemy that says you're two individuals instead of speaking the language of God, which says you're one. It's our problem. Oneness says it's ours to challenge. Oneness says it's ours to journey through. Oneness says it's our money. I've been on maternity leave for 9 months because I've had a baby and it's been glorious. I have friends who've also been on maternity leave, and because it's his money and her money, they've had to go to him and ask to borrow money in order to go and do the food shopping because it's usually her salary that pays for the food in their families. That's not oneness. Now, I'm not talking about how you organize it. You can organize it how you want. And frankly, I'm the wrong Hailwood to talk to about how you do that. But oneness says it's our money. Oneness says you earn, I earn, or you don't earn and I earn. But we have resources and wealth that has been gifted to us, and we are going to decide how to do that. And honestly, I think that finance is one of the things that most readily breaks marriages up because people aren't prepared to talk about it. But there is a sense of, this is mine. I'm not going to share this. That is not oneness. That is not how God designed us. And we need to, with our finances, pursue oneness, as well as in all of these other areas. Finance says it's our new opportunity. It's not like, oh, that's nice. Yeah, my husband's, he's applying for a new job. He's going off somewhere and I don't really know. No, it's our opportunity. If he's preparing for something, if she's preparing for something, then it's our thing to prepare for. This week, we've been preparing for me to be here. And so it's my opportunity to be here. But actually, it's been Jez that has owned it with me. It's our opportunity. So he's been taking more weight in the things that I sometimes do in order to release me because it's ours. It's our opportunity. And when we say it's my new job, it's my new career, it's my new business, we talk the language which says we're individuals instead of talking the language of oneness. Oneness says it's our family. It's not your problem with your mother. It's our family, right? When you join families together, there's the odd challenge. I remember the first Christmas that we were together, I was like, why are the Hailwoods doing Christmas wrong? I don't understand. Why has nobody told them that you don't open presents at this time of day? It's a tiny little thing, but I tell you, it caused a few little arguments for Christmas number 2 when we tried to figure out what this Hailwood way looks like. But oneness doesn't say it's about your family. You go sort out your parents. You go sort out that thing. But it also says when there's pain in one of our families, yeah, you go. You better go see them because it's painful. No, it's our family. And we're going. And we're going together. Oneness says you matter. Jez has a brain that has straight lines in it and thinks in a linear format and is a grid and is logical. And I don't think there's a straight line in my brain. And I don't understand most of what he does. I don't think there's yet been a job that I've fully been able to explain exactly what he does, though I've really tried to listen and copy the words that he says when I hear him explaining the things that he does. I've listened to countless things that I don't understand. And honestly, I wouldn't naturally have an interest in, because it matters to him. Because it's who he is. Because oneness says that you matter. Oneness says that if we are going to flourish as one, I need to release you and encourage you and see you step into all of the things and all of the differences that are in you. Oneness says you matter. Oneness takes time. Oneness says whatever it is that's in your heart, I'm going to be part of it, and we're going to see it come together. And when that's polar opposites, it's exciting because you get to experience and sit in and be part of things that you think, I've got no idea what's going on. But look how happy he is. Look how excited he is. There are conversations, and afterwards he's like, and I think I don't understand, but I love you. And I love what God's put in you. And he does the same for me as well. And oneness speaks faith. Faith is being certain of the things that we don't yet see. I'm going to be really honest with you. This week, I have wrestled for this word like never before. Oneness speaks faith. All week, Jez has been saying, it's in you. We've got this. You've got this. Claire, you called for this. It's in us. He's taken that practical weight, but he's spoken faith. He's spoken this word into being by the words that he speaks. Maybe there are things that you don't yet see in your marriage. Maybe you don't see any romance right now. Maybe you don't see any intimacy right now. Maybe you don't see any joy right now. But oneness says it's in us. There's romance in us. It's not going to look like that, and it's not going to, but it's in us. Oneness says the things of faith. Oneness speaks things of faith. Oneness speaks the things that we can't see, that are currently unseen as though they were. Oneness speaks things into being. And we travel through a place of vision. We travel as we hold on to promises and hope, even when we don't see it immediately in the outworking. I promise you that Jez and I are just pretty ordinary people. You know, the kind of ordinary, like we prepare meals every day and we get our kids vaguely dressed every day and we try and get them all out of the door to where they need to be every day. We pay the bills, we go food shopping, we go to work. We have to try and keep our house vaguely. You know, that kind of ordinary. We're nothing special. We haven't got supersonic marriage powers. None of the people who you've heard speaking in this series have got supersonic marriage powers because they don't exist. 2 Corinthians says this about each one of us. We're like common clay jars that carry this glorious treasure within, so that the extraordinary overflow of power will be seen as God's, not ours. There's a beauty in the ordinariness of our lives, in our broken bodies, in our imperfect relationship, because we've chosen to say, we believe that in us is this extraordinary treasure that is Jesus, and the reality of knowing him and the reality of a relationship within him. And we believe that in our oneness, there's an opportunity to demonstrate something of what it means to follow Jesus and to be in a relationship with Jesus. That's what it means to pursue Jesus in the ordinary, everyday oneness of our lives. And it goes on to say, though we experience every kind of pressure, we're not crushed. We have, over the years, gone hard-pressed, not crushed. Hard-pressed, not crushed. As seasons shift, as new children enter the family, as new job opportunities come, as pressure piles in, as my health deteriorates for a while, as there are pressures that come externally, as there are missiles that get landed in, which we have nothing for, as bits of my heart and my character revealed, which means that oneness is difficult. We're hard-pressed, but we're not crushed. At times, we don't know what to do. At times, we don't know what to do. But quitting is not an option. We're persecuted by others, but God has not forsaken us. So no wonder we don't give up. Outwardly, our outer person gradually wears away. Our inner being, however, is renewed every single day. We view our slight, short-lived troubles in the light of eternity. What if the challenge and the suffering that you're walking through right now is the very thing that God wants to give you an eternal perspective on today and say, I'm going to use that to minister to others? What if the challenge and the suffering that you've experienced, what if the difficulty in your marriage, what if the gap between you that you feel is unreachable, the gap it's too big to reach, what if that's the very thing that God's going to use you in to minister to someone at the school gates? What if somebody at the school gates says to you, oh man, I'm really struggling because my husband has this addiction, and you say, I know what it is. I know what it is to have one of you with an addiction. Let me tell you about God and how he walked with me and us in our oneness, and we pursued wholeness as one through our addiction. What if we chose to ask God to show us the challenge and the difference in light of eternity? What if we chose to see our lives as this short speck in the whole bigger picture of eternity, as an opportunity to show an unbelieving world who God is? This morning, I believe that what God wants to do in this room, around the world, in our locations, wherever you're listening to this, I believe God wants to minister hope. He wants to minister hope to you if you feel like the difference between you is just too vast. If you feel like, yeah, but you have no idea how far removed my one half is from his one half. If this notion of oneness today has made you angry even, or grief-stricken. What happens when the oneness is damaged? This picture of oneness being like a circle, and when it's pulled apart and there's a gap that's made between us, and in that it's like an open wound. There's an open wound, and what happens is that it feels too painful and we can't touch it, and then we can't figure out how it's ever going to be whole again. Today, God comes to the open wound to minister hope.